Welcome back to the deep dive, where we sift through the noise and get right to the heart of the matter. Today, we're looking at some leaked promo stuff for the Samsung Galaxy S25. It comes from Tecnoblog, a Portuguese website.
Ah, interesting.
And this leak suggests some pretty exciting features are coming.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about, the usual incremental upgrades like a better camera or a faster processor. This time, Samsung seems to be going all in on AI for the S25.
That's really interesting. What strikes me is that they seem to be shifting away from Bixby, their own voice assistant, and instead they're embracing Google's Gemini AI.
Okay, so that's a big change. I mean, it could potentially change how we use smartphones altogether.
Right, exactly.
So let's start by looking at the hardware specs. Okay, so the S25 will have a 4900 milliamp battery,
Okay.
which should be good enough for a full day of use. The Ultra model will have an even bigger battery, 5000 milliamp. So power users will be happy about that. Now, cameras. The S25 will have a triple lens system, the main attraction being a 50 megapixel wide-angle lens. So you can expect some pretty stunning photos with that. But get this, the Ultra model is rumored to have a 200 megapixel main sensor.
200 megapixels.
That's right. That's a huge jump in mobile photography.
Yeah, those specs are pretty impressive. But like you said, the real story here is the AI integration. It seems Samsung is really betting big on Google's Gemini, and not just as a simple add-on, but integrating it deeply into the phone's core functionality.
So what does that mean for the average user? What kind of real-world impact will this deeper integration have?
Well, imagine you're watching a YouTube video and you want to jot down the key points. Instead of, scrambling for a pen and paper, you could just ask Gemini to summarize the video into a note.
Oh, that's cool.
That's just one example of how powerful and convenient this level of AI integration could be.
And it's not just about simple commands either. Samsung is introducing a feature called Now Brief. It uses AI to proactively offer helpful information based on your daily routine and your current activities.
Interesting. So it kind of anticipates your needs.
Exactly.
So like waking up in the morning and your phone automatically shows you the weather forecast and a summary of your sleep data.
Yeah, or imagine being at lunchtime. And Now Brief reminds you about promotions available at nearby restaurants.
So it's all about personalized information at your fingertips exactly when you need it.
That sounds incredibly convenient. But doesn't it also raise some concerns about privacy? For these AI features to work, they'll need access to a lot of personal data.
Yeah, that's a valid point. With Gemini potentially having access to our schedules, our locations, even our browsing habits, the question of data privacy becomes really important.
Right.
Both Samsung and Google need to be totally transparent about how they collect, store, and use this data. Users should know exactly what data Gemini is accessing and what control they have over it.
It seems like with all this focus on AI, the hardware upgrades are almost taking a back seat. But what about the new processor? Samsung claims it's the most powerful processor ever in a Galaxy device. But they're being pretty vague about the details.
Right, they haven't said whether it will be an Exynos or Snapdragon processor. There's a lot of speculation, especially in Europe, because users there have historically preferred the performance of Snapdragon chips over Samsung's own Exynos processors.
So we'll have to wait for more details. But the possibility of a Snapdragon chip in the European market is definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for our European listeners, this could be good news. This might mean that Samsung is listening to customer feedback and trying to deliver a more consistent experience across different regions.
So far, the Galaxy S25 is shaping up to be a pretty big release. But before we get carried away with the excitement, I think we should consider the potential downsides of this level of AI integration.
Yeah, you're right. We need to talk about the possible drawbacks along with the benefits. I think one of the biggest concerns with AI is the potential for algorithmic bias, where an AI system might unintentionally perpetuate existing societal biases because of the data it was trained on.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like on a smartphone?
Sure, let's say the AI powering Now Brief was trained on data that suggests people in certain zip codes are more likely to eat at expensive restaurants. Well, the AI might then recommend those restaurants more often to users in those areas, even if those users have never actually shown a preference for fine dining.
Right, so it could reinforce existing economic disparities
Yeah,
and limit the choices presented to those users.
exactly. That's the risk.
Okay, that's a really important point. It highlights the need for careful monitoring of these AI systems to make sure they're not creating or reinforcing harmful biases.
Absolutely. And users also need to be aware of these potential biases and critically evaluate the information that AI systems give them.
So we've talked about data privacy and algorithmic bias. Are there any other ethical considerations we should be thinking about with this level of AI integration in our smartphones?
Well, another important aspect is the potential for increased dependence on technology. As our phones become more capable and anticipate our needs, there's a risk we might become overly reliant on them and lose some of our own decision-making abilities.
It's like that classic sci-fi trope, where humans become subservient to machines.
Yeah.
But on a more realistic level, I can see how constantly being fed information and suggestions by my phone could make me less inclined to think for myself.
Yeah, exactly. It's about finding the right balance between convenience and maintaining our autonomy.
Right.
We need to be aware of how these technologies might be shaping our behavior and make sure we're using them in a way that empowers us rather than diminishes our agency.
Okay, so all of this makes me wonder, is all this AI integration really necessary? Are these features truly enhancing our lives, or are they just flashy gimmicks to sell more phones?
Hmm, that's a good question. Some people might say we were perfectly fine without AI assistants managing our schedules and summarizing our videos. But I think technology is constantly evolving. AI could revolutionize how we interact with our devices and make them genuinely more helpful and useful.
I see both sides of the argument. I'm excited about the possibilities, but also a little wary of becoming too dependent on technology.
Yeah, I get that.
It seems like the key is using these features mindfully and not letting them take over our lives.
I agree completely. It's about being informed consumers and making conscious choices about how we integrate these technologies into our lives. The future of AI is still being written, and it's up to all of us to shape it in a way that benefits humanity.
So with all that said, what's the bottom line for our listeners who are thinking about upgrading to the Galaxy S25? What's the key takeaway?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the Galaxy S25 isn't just about better hardware. It represents a shift towards a future where AI is at the center of our digital experiences. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen.
It's a brave new world. It'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds. We've covered a lot today, from exciting new features to potential ethical concerns, but there's always more to explore.
Yeah, it feels like we're on the verge of something huge. Maybe the S25 is the phone that really pushes us into this new era of AI.
It could be a turning point, yeah.
Yeah.
The way they've integrated AI has the potential to totally change how we use our phones.
And how we interact with the world around us, too.
Absolutely.
So let's wrap things up. What about our listeners who are thinking about upgrading to the S25, maybe even pre-ordering it? What should they consider before making that decision?
Well, I think the most important question is, how comfortable are you with this much AI in your life?
Right.
The S25, with its Gemini features, gives us a glimpse into a future where our phones are constantly learning about us,
Yeah.
anticipating our needs, maybe even making decisions for us.
Yeah.
That can be super convenient, but it also requires a lot of trust.
And maybe even giving up some control.
It's a trade-off everyone have to consider for themselves. On the one hand, you have the potential for more efficiency, more personalization, maybe even a little bit of magic as your phone anticipates your every need.
Right.
But on the other hand, there are privacy concerns, potential for algorithmic bias, maybe even a feeling of unease as your phone becomes more like a digital companion than just a tool.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And it's not just about individual users either. We need to think about the bigger picture, the societal impact of this technology.
Absolutely.
As AI gets more sophisticated and integrated into our lives, we need to talk about how to make sure it's developed and used responsibly, ethically, in a way that benefits all of us.
Okay, so the big question is, will the S25 with its Gemini integration be a game changer? Or just another fancy gimmick?
Yeah, I guess only time will tell.
One thing's for sure, though, it's a conversation worth having. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.